Hello and welcome. When does an environmentally devastating project become a necessity? In the developing world, the issue of progress is often pitted against the loss of human rights. In the Amazon, the multi-billion-dollar Belo Monte Dam project is supposed to provide a clean energy source for Brazil's growing electricity needs. But critics say it will only help local industries, not the general population, and destroy the homes and livelihoods of tens of thousands of indigenous people in the process. A consortium has been picked to build the dam, but legal appeals are ongoing, with local tribes vowing to continue their protests. Hollywood film director James Cameron went to the Amazon recently to learn about the issue firsthand. He discovered real-life parallels to his mega-hit movie Avatar as he traveled along the river, meeting with local leaders, and came away promising to help them prevent the dam's construction. And as he explains, it's an issue he feels very strongly about. James Cameron, thank you for your time.
Yeah, Riz, it's such a pleasure to be on the show.
Well, listen, I want to ask you about your recent trip to the region there, to Brazil and the rainforest area. Tell me about this dam project, which has caused so much controversy now, and the kind of damage that it's supposed to do, according to those who really want to stop it.
It's so heartbreaking. I mean, I met with indigenous leaders down there and the people that are going to be directly affected by this project, guided in by NGOs, Brazilian NGOs who briefed me on it. And these people are, they're strong warrior, indigenous warrior people. They had their war paint on and everything, but they are scared for themselves and for their children. 25,000 people from 18 different tribes are going to be either displaced completely, or they're going to have their livelihoods destroyed by the affecting of the flow of the river or the interruption of migrating fish. It's just horrible.
Now, is there an upside? I mean, the government of Brazil says thousands of jobs will be created. This is a great new opportunity.
Well, I think that's a complete whitewash of the situation, and let me tell you why. Brazil has power problems, clearly. You've got these enormous cities, Sao Paulo, greater Sao Paulo, 20 million people, Rio, all these other coastal cities. More than 1,000 miles away from where this dam is, I think 1,500. And they're not going to get the energy from this dam. This dam, the energy is going to go to aluminum smelters in the immediate area, and the profits of those will be taken offshore. The Brazilian taxpayers will subsidize the building of it, and the profits will go offshore, and they won't get the power, and they're being lied to.
Are all the local people unified in their resistance to this, or is there some sense of division? Are there still people locally, the indigenous people, you have to persuade?
No, I'm not persuading anyone. I really just went there to listen to what they had to say, take it in, and then carry their plight outside of their immediate area to the rest of Brazil primarily, because those are the people that have to influence government, and to the international community. But no, they're in absolute unison on this.
How strong is the activism within Brazil to stop this?
Well, locally around where the project is, it's huge, and amongst the greater indigenous community, who are organized by various indigenous rights issues, NGOs, there's a lot of unity. But I think the greater part of the urban Brazilian populace is really asleep on this issue so far. I mean, there are strong activists, but I think they're in the minority.
Could these campaigners against it do anything without the kind of help, your kind of help, celebrity endorsement, celebrity help from outside?
Well, look, I think they're very effective organizations working within the country, and these are people of great conscience and great energy who are doing fantastic work. But I think they've sort of hit a wall. The government is just not listening. They're not doing a transparent process. They're not allowing the people who are directly affected, the communities directly affected, to have any voice in this whatsoever. And so maybe it does need a little bit of an outside media spotlight brought to it.
It's a little more complicated because this dam, it's a multi-billion-dollar project, but yes, it's part of a multi-hundred-billion-dollar project. So
it's amazing.
It's a big battle.
This is a huge battle. Certainly all the watch groups are concerned about it, and the government's concerned about it for the very same reason. It's a bit of a pivot, because if this dam goes with this process, which is not a good process, I think people are almost more concerned about the process at the higher abstract level. Because if this goes, it just is a template. It's a cookie cutter for how these other 60 hydroelectric projects which are on the books will proceed. And all the people that are displaced and affected by those various projects won't have a voice either.
You believe there are alternatives? It doesn't have to be dams, inline turbines and so on?
Of course. Look, the dams are 20th century ideas. This is the 21st century. We have solar. They're right on the equator. They have tons of solar flux. They could power their country from solar. They can use wind. They can use offshore wind. They can use inline turbines. They've got mighty rivers, some of them miles across. You could put inline turbines that would harvest a lot of energy without having to dam the river, affect the fish, create flooding upstream and diluted flow downstream. There are many technical solutions, and they could do it. They've got the money to do it.
I want to put a couple of viewer questions to you, if I may. On this show, I try and get the viewer questions in from around the world. This one's actually from Massachusetts here in the US. Malik Ben Eram writes in saying, the dam project itself is government-owned and financed, so there will be a lot of unhappy campers and discontent among Indigenous people. But I also believe that the sacrifice of the few for the greater good, believe in the sacrifice of the few for the greater good. Now, of course, we mentioned the power plant, something that the Brazil, or power is what Brazil really needs. Well, is it a simple case of sacrificing a few for the greater good?
I think if it was that simple, that argument would pertain. But the problem is that the sacrifice of the few, and it's not that few, it's 25,000 people, and there are 20,000 people in Altamira, a city just upstream, who will be displaced as well. They're not indigenous, but it's a local community. So it's not really a few. And the few are the ones that will benefit. They'll be there won't be an enormous workforce that's going to benefit indefinitely, because the power is going to aluminum smelting plants, and they are probably the lowest number of employed people per megawatt of any industry, because it's a highly power intensive industry. So you're not going to make hundreds of thousands of jobs with this additional power. The power is not going where it's needed in the country, so the Brazilian populace will be paying for it, subsidizing, not directly benefiting. The money's going to benefit a few people, and most of that's going to go offshore, because it's Alcoa Aluminum and other foreign-owned companies. So again, I would tend to agree in principle with Malik's point, but it doesn't pertain to this situation. Your
concern's also environmental. I think that's one of the big ones.
Absolutely.
And presumably, I know that the dam is predicted to cause drought and so on, but your concerns are about the deforestation, presumably.
Deforestation's a big issue, and this is what I think makes it an international issue. If they're mowing down forest at a rate of a Belgium a year. I don't know how Belgium got to be the unit of deforestation, but it is. Okay, you think of several billion tons of methane being released into the atmosphere. That drops exactly to the bottom line of the overall carbon content of the atmosphere. CO2 goes up, methane goes up, temperature goes up, and we all suffer. So the Amazon rainforest is this huge kind of organ. People have called it the lungs of the planet, but in a funny way, it's a carbon sequestration organ. It's already doing what we're talking about doing with coal-fired power plants. We're talking about putting CO2 in the ground and all that. That's what the rainforest has done for tens of thousands of years. You chop it down, it all gets released.
In fact, you've touched on this now with an email based on an email I'm about to read you. This is from Billy Hussein in the UK, who says, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said people from developed nations should not lecture Brazil on the environment because those countries mowed down their own forests long ago. What is James Cameron's response to that criticism? Now, I know you actually did write to the president and say that, I am an outsider, but of course that is the blunt question.
Well, look, I think that's a morally incorrect position. Just because one person killed somebody doesn't give another person the right. I mean, first of all, I'm Canadian, and our conservation practices have not been sterling, but probably a little better than the U.S. for most of our history. Only because most of the forest is so far north, nobody goes up there, right? But Brazil looks to the U.S. as a kind of an example of what they want to be, and they are aggressively growing their economy as we did. But we did it in a time of manifest destiny. We did it with railroads, and we conquered the West. And look where our indigenous people are, and look where our forests are, sequestered to national parks, which themselves are under duress. I think a better way to look at it is, we, coming to Brazil, are coming from your future to your present to warn you about where you're going. I made that movie too. It's called Terminator.
Well, it's interesting though. You've chosen this particular this issue, and you were talking about issues such as Canada and other places. What made you pick on this particular concern?
Yeah, it's interesting because there are so many issues and that have come to me from all over the world in the aftermath of Avatar, where people have said, "This is my reality." You know, I've received photos of Palestinian protesters having painted themselves blue and saying, "We are like the Na'vi," you know, and from India and from Indonesia and that sort of thing, and of course from all over the Amazon region, not just in Brazil. This particular battle, I think, is pivotal because, again, of the process, and because when I went there, it became personal. I met these guys, I met these people, and they warmly embraced us. They took us into their villages, and they challenged us to try to help them. So I figure the way people should go through their lives is when something enters their little sphere, they need to deal with it. You know, I didn't go looking for this specifically, but once I got there, I realized this is the confluence of all the big forces: energy, conservation, the forest, indigenous rights. It's all right there in this one story. It's Avatar for real.
Interesting you raise Avatar. I want to just show you a bit of video. It's actually interesting you said about how it's been adopted. And this video, let me show it to you. It's from a place called Bilain, which is where Palestinians were protesting dressed as the Na'vi.
This is what I was talking about. Sure, I haven't seen the clip though. Where do I watch?
Right over. I think that. Yeah, unfortunately they were gassed and shot at by the Israeli defense forces.
It seems that both sides saw the movie, because of course what did the bad guys do? They gassed them.
Now, in terms of how do you regard that this movement and using Avatar as a sort of a mantra for indigenous people protesting?
I think it's okay, but I mean, I think as a filmmaker, it's kind of interesting that people have glommed onto this all over the world and see their reality in this fantasy story. I think when I was writing it, I was thinking, well, this stuff is mostly in the past now. We can mourn for a past that we've sort of managed incorrectly. And the Native Americans, you know, their kids now have the highest suicide rate of any teenage group in the country, and so on, because they've lost their culture and they're displaced and so on. And now I realize it may be more in the past here in North America, but there are hot spots all over the world where this is going on, and Avatar is being played out for real.
Putting you on the spot a bit with an email that came in, if I may, from Arslan Jaffrey from Washington, D.C., who says, do you plan on donating any of the profits from Avatar to save indigenous populations under threat? I've
already done so. Well, I don't discriminate the profits from this film to whatever my personal resources are, but I've already made some pretty major donations. And I think more importantly, I'm donating my time and my energy. And to those fans of Avatar, you guys are making a sacrifice too, because all the time I'm spending now acting directly is not time I'm making the next movie.
Let me. This is. I mean, essentially, looking at the size of this project, and the dam is just one part, as we mentioned. This is potentially a very long-term project for you if you're going to really be behind this. Are you in it for the long term?
Yeah, absolutely. I made that commitment to the people that I met down there, and I mean, look, there's a limit. I'm not an ambassador. I'm not a politician. I'm not even a major industrialist. You know, my standing in this is as an artist and as a concerned citizen of the world, and as someone who has been personally engaged, on a personal level with the people that are at risk here.
James Cameron, thank you very much. I wish you luck.
Okay, Riz, thanks very much.
Thank you. We have to take a short break right now. We'll be back with a look at some of the issues facing international human rights campaigners at a global level. Britain's Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York, is one of the organisers of a global conference on that topic in Norway. We'll check in with her and the founder of the Oslo Freedom Forum when we return. Don't go away. Welcome back. The case of Brazil's Belo Monte Dam highlights the challenge of ensuring human rights while allowing for progress and development. But what happens when those abusing the rights have a far greater voice than the abused? Well, the United Nations created the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the aftermath of World War II, but it seems that any real change in protecting the vulnerable still falls short of the Declaration's goals. It's one of the key topics being discussed at the Oslo Freedom Forum. Joining me from there is Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York and patron of the conference. She's been very active on this front. With her is Thor Halvorsen, the meeting's founder, who's also a film producer and president of the Human Rights Foundation in New York. I welcome both of you. Ma'am, if I could start with you and let me ask what got you to be involved with this particular issue, and what you hope that the forum in Oslo will deliver in terms of giving people something to walk away with.
Well, firstly, I believe in following good leadership and having people close to you that have an extraordinary strength and courage and enthusiasm for life. So I followed Thor Halvorsen here to Oslo and accepted his invitation in order to make this the Davos of human rights, in order to make sure that, in my case, particularly as a global mother, that we can really bring home the human rights for children. I am a human rights activist for children.
What particular cause, ma'am, what particular cause do you think is the most important or the most prioritized at this particular gathering?
Well, from my point of view and what I'm going to be talking about education and how important it is in order to give the child the right to be educated, to go forward, to make changes. If governments understood that their GMP is the youth of tomorrow, they ought to take more respect and pay more attention to really whether their children are getting their needs met.
Thor Halvorsen, good to have you also, and congratulations on getting a sort of fairly high-powered group together for this event. Now, I wonder why there is a need, though, to organize an event like this. Surely the United Nations is usually the one trying to get together the human rights issues and address them.
If only, Riz. The reality is Durban, Durban 2 in Geneva, most of these conferences that involve governments tend to be gatherings of human rights violators, not gatherings for human rights. And we wanted to create a global platform for human rights that actually includes human rights defenders. So it's not a gathering of bureaucrats who are getting together to drink expensive wine and talk about policies they're never really serious about. It's about bringing together the people that are on the front lines, people that are making a huge difference due to their stories, due to their activism. That this one, for instance, we have 7 very powerful women from Africa and the Middle East that have come to tell their stories, their horrendous stories about what they've lived through. It's really an incredible gathering, and we invite you to come in 2011.
Well, thank you.
If I might just jump in there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, sorry. Riz, if I might just jump in there. I was particularly taken by the story of this lady that is fighting for the rights of gay and lesbianism in Uganda. And the Ugandan government want to bring out a right to say that anyone that has the freedom to feel like being gay or lesbian should be incarcerated and put in jail. And that if you, in fact, even know of someone that is gay or lesbian, you get a 3-year jail sentence too. In this day and age, that doesn't cut the mustard.
Well, you know, Thor, also I wanted to touch on one thing. You're a film producer and very active in the media as well. We just spoke on this program with James Cameron, the Hollywood director who made the film Avatar. He's actually been focused on an environmental issue in the Amazon rainforest, where the Belo Monte Dam project is threatening the environment and the indigenous population there. Now, the difficulty is Brazil, as a country, says it desperately needs the power for progress, and to grow the economy. How do you balance the idea of basically the environment and progress with human rights concerns?
Well, I don't think that there is a contradiction between human rights on the one hand and progress. I do think that too many times these issues become too politicized. Sometimes NGOs that are based thousands and thousands of miles away in European cities or in the United States get to decide what happens to some of these people locally. I think the important thing is to talk to the local people, is to talk to all stakeholders. And I definitely think I'm against politicizing it. And as far as Mr. Cameron goes, I hope that with all of the billion-dollar profits he made on Avatar, that he can step in and help both the people there and those who desperately need help. I mean, he certainly has the money to do it.
He's certainly concerned, judging by what he said. Now, the Duchess, if I could put an email to you, please, ma'am. This came in from a viewer, from Noel Benjamin Reuters, who says, in some countries, particularly African ones, people don't even know their rights. How will the Duchess help address this problem? You mentioned Uganda, of course, but how can you expand the knowledge at a much wider level, not just those who, say, attend a conference and have a vested interest?
Well, that's a great question. I think my job is to help education through awareness. My job is to make sure that the silent whispers have a voice. And so that's why I'm using the Oslo Freedom Forum as a platform in order to get that voice out. But in answer to his question, you're absolutely right. Winnicett is 12. She's raped by 4 people, and then she's told to marry her rapist. She needs a voice. She is, in fact, now 21 years old, and she's trained to be a lawyer and is going around the whole of Ethiopia in order to give women the right to choose. That's what we need to highlight.
Saw an email for you, if I may as well, sir. This came in from Indonesia, from Astri Arini Waluyu, who says, in many cases, human rights violations are backed by developed countries whose citizens are highly educated and knowledgeable about human rights. And so I wonder, how much does politicking get in the way? When you're trying to highlight human rights issues, how much do you find politics and the compromise of the politics gets in the way of achieving some real progress?
All the time, all the time. Nations will, on the one hand, talk about North Korea and what's going on in North Korea, and then turn around and sell things to North Korea or do business with them or not say anything mean about what they're doing. This happens in certain parts of the Middle East where you have despots that have been in power for decades, and yet big governments like the United States or Great Britain will turn a blind eye if it serves their strategic interests. Now, the goal of a country's government is to serve the interests of their citizens, and obviously realpolitik will get in the way. Our goal here at the Oslo Freedom Forum is to shine a light on what is going on in those places and make it almost impossible for the politicians to turn away. And we're doing that because the speeches that are given here, they will all be recorded, they are all going to go online, and we're going to get the message out as much as we can. We really are creating the Davos of human rights here.
Well, Thor Halverson and Duchess of York, Sarah Duchess of York, thank you very much for joining us, and I wish you luck with the conference. Hope to see you there next year.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Riz.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us too. Now remember, you can follow our program on Twitter. We'll keep you notified on upcoming shows, and you can send us questions and comments to pose to our guests. On the next show, what really drives a person to become a suicide bomber? We talk to 2 experts who say it's not poverty, ideology or faith. Instead, they say they have evidence that it's provoked by military occupation. Be sure to tune in for that and send in your questions from me and the team. We'll see you next time.